Prime time local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
The MP for the Battlefords, Lloydminster, has had a busy summer. Stacey Comer caught up with Rosemary Falk to find out what constituents are discussing with her while she's back here at home.
Rosemary Falk is here today. Rosemary is the MP for the Battlefords, Lloydminster. Rosemary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Stacey.
Well, let's talk about your summer, Rosemary. What have you been up to so far?
For sure. So it's been quite busy thus far. I was here in Lloydminster for Canada Day. We then had the parade that I was able to participate in, which is always a treat. I was up to St. Walburg. They always have a Communities in Bloom garden contest. So it's always fun to go up there, and it's such an honor to be a part of that and go meet with just everyday people, right? And then later this summer, I've got some events, North Battleford. So in the Battlefords, Macklin has their Bunnock coming up here. And then I believe there is another one, the Blueberry Festival in St. Walburg. So that's just a few of those for the month of August coming up.
Well, Rosemary, most people have already talked about the fact that, Saskatchewan, a good portion of the province is in a drought or agricultural crisis. Thankfully not a lot around here, but still anywhere in the province it affects, it has that a ripple effect. So do you think that there should be more done at this point by the federal government to help the provinces, or do you think it should be something that stays at a provincial level?
Well, I think that the federal government, and if we look at them today, I mean, there is the discussion of a cabinet shuffle coming. I mean, I think something that this government, the federal Liberals, have failed at is actually listening to our farmers and our rural Canadians. I mean, I think absolutely that they should be listening and engaged with them, knowing what's going on, because as you know this, and you just alluded to that, we're okay around here, but not necessarily everywhere else, right? And so that federal minister needs to be directly engaged with every region, not only of the province, but of the country, to know how the farmers are being affected.
Now, there is talk of a cabinet shuffle tomorrow. Looks like it's going to happen. Does a cabinet shuffle really make that much difference, Rosemary? And also, do you think this is a sign that maybe we will see an election sooner rather than later?
Well, we are in a minority. So some days I wake up thinking, you never know, we're going to have an election, and I'll be sent home ready to do that. I think what this alludes to is the fact that Justin Trudeau's government isn't working. The ministers haven't been working. They haven't been engaged. They haven't been listening to Canadians and their respected portfolios. I mean, we've seen failure after failure with more than one cabinet minister. So who knows? All I know is I don't trust Justin Trudeau. I mean, we have to remember he called an election pandemic, or a pandemic election, right? That election right in the middle in 2021 when he said he wouldn't. So who knows what tricks he has up his sleeve, but I can guarantee that we have all been working hard, especially Conservatives, listening to Canadians, but ready to hit the doors and hopefully have a change of power.
What are you hearing from your constituents just in general, Rosemary? I know that people take the opportunity to write you letters or contact you in person, and you're very good, obviously, for getting back to them. But what are some of the topics that they seem to be really concerned about at this point?
Cost of living. Everything is expensive. We know in just the beginning of the month, July 1st, carbon tax 2.0 hit everywhere. And we know this, especially because we're in a rural riding. We have producers, whether that is grain or even livestock, right? That they know, we feel it, that when that carbon tax is hit on them, of course they're passing, that gets passed on and passed on and passed on and passed on. And ultimately the consumer is then paying for that. So definitely the cost of living, everybody is finding everything just more expensive.
Now, we talked a little bit about what your plans are for the summer, Rosemary, but obviously you guys are working for the next sitting of the Parliament as well. So are there any topics, any bills, anything in specific that you guys are working towards bringing forward when the House of Commons starts its sitting again?
For sure. So that's a great question. I know for myself, I have the second reading of my private members bill coming up. That'll be scheduled if we don't have an election the first week back. But what we do during the summertime is really listen to Canadians, see what is working for them, what is not working for them, what they like, what they don't like, how we can change that, what policies we can do. We do have a convention that is coming up, a party convention in September before the House resumes. So I am almost positive there will be a lot of conversation around that, especially with grassroots members, and then taking that back once Parliament resumes, if we're not in election. You never know.
Well, Rosemary, I know that sometimes constituents get frustrated because they feel like their voices aren't being heard, or they don't know where the outlet is to reach out, and feel like, maybe they're in a minority with their issues. But what do you have to say to that? Because I know I've talked to a number of people who have said, yes, we wrote to Rosemary and we got a response back. So, well, what do you tell people who kind of get frustrated and aren't quite sure how to go about getting in touch with the government and making their views known?
Absolutely. So I think always communication is always important. It doesn't matter where that is, but respectful communication is key. I think that's a way that we can move forward in any. It doesn't matter what organization or any level of government. Definitely keep that open dialogue with either councillors at a municipal level, our MLA premier at the provincial level, and then the members of parliament at the federal level, and making sure I know my office will do what we can to try to get to the correct avenue so that we can help out. But we just have to keep that dialogue continuing and bringing forward ideas also. If there is something that's going on and someone out there has a great policy idea that could help make that something easier or fix something, I mean, all about cutting red tape. I would love that. Making life easier for Canadians. Reach your member of parliament or your MLA, and we can see what, maybe there's an avenue that we can try to put that forward.
All right, Rosemary. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll chat again. I think we're going to have some topics to talk about, some interesting topics here in the next month or so. So thanks again, and we'll chat with you soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stacey.
Alberta's government is taking issue with the federal government's priorities, including a net zero transition by 2035. Our local MLA will have a key role in the government's response in his new role. Garth Rosewell joins me now. He is the MLA for Vermilion Lloydminster Wainwright, and this month he was named by Premier Danielle Smith as the chair of the Alberta First Cabinet Policy Committee. He was also named as chair of that committee when she was first elected as a UCP leader. Garth, how important is it for you to serve in this role? Obviously, this is a big priority for the Premier.
Yeah, well, it's like, what I like about it is the process. Ministers consult with their stakeholders and develop policies on issues that we had in our platform or issues we want to bring forward, and then they bring it to this committee to be reviewed by other ministers and private members. We do votes, we make recommendations, that goes to cabinet, and then they make their policy and come to caucus to have another shot at it. So it's really a good process, and the difference from where it used to be is that we have the backbenchers have way more input into policy development, which is great. And the experience so far is that suggestions have been listened to, and when we made a good case, it created some changes. So that's the beauty of this system.
Now, I know you've only been in this role for a couple of months now, but what are some of the issues that have already come to the committee table?
Well, the first one was the Sovereignty Act, and one of the suggestions we changed the name because it was viewed as a separatist type thing, but it wasn't. It was more a jurisdictional type thing, and so the name was changed, and then there was a concern that maybe some the ministers had too much power, so amendments were made to it. So that's the highlighted example. The ministries that are involved in this that we're overseeing and that the policies will come from will be Justice, Finance and Treasury Board, Jobs, Economy and Trade, Affordability, Utilities, Environment and Parks, and then the Premier herself with Intergovernmental Affairs Minister as well. So what that is that's mostly the ministries that involve our relationship with Ottawa. So if if something comes up and legislation or regulations have to be used to push back on something that we think the federal government's doing, that'll come through this committee. So it's pretty important, and that's a pretty powerful group of ministers. The other ones, Shane Getson, Grant Hunter, Chantal Jejong, and myself are the private members on it. So it's going to be a very interesting group, and we'll deal with some pretty important issues.
I know this provincial government isn't afraid of confronting the federal government when things come up that Alberta has issues with, and recently a report from the Public Policy Forum pegged the cost of transitioning to a net zero power grid by 2035 at over $1.7 trillion. Obviously, this is going to be a concern for Alberta's government. I'll just get your reaction to that.
Yeah, they want to, get to net zero, but theirs is to essentially end the use of fossil fuels, which, that's like 80 or 90% of our electricity is generated by that. I've grown to learn that BC is about 95% hydro. Ontario is a lot of nuclear. Quebec is hydro. So the ones that impacts the most are essentially Alberta, Saskatchewan, and mostly Manitoba also has some hydro and some nuclear as well. So those are, and the length of time it takes to build anything, or to get a project done, 2035 is just unachievable. It's going to be tough enough trying to do any of this by 2050. So the pushback that we'll get within this committee is just, what's in Alberta's best interest. And, because we want to develop our fossil fuel resources, and if net zero is important, then find a way to do that while still using those fossil fuels. And carbon capture, utilization, and storage is one of those things. And we got the geology we have in Alberta lends itself to that. So we think we can get there, but 2035 is just unachievable. So if they push on that, then we just have to push back.
So what exactly could that pushback look like, and would your committee play a role?
Well, if there's a regulation or a policy or a legislation that have to happen in order to push back on that, then we would do that, right? Like they would, we might create a legislation or regulation that would just say, look, we're not going to follow that. You're impinging on our jurisdiction, and that you're out of scope. So that and if they push it, then that might take it to court, I guess, if that's where it wound up. But those types of decisions would come through the committee and be debated in the committee as to the best way to go about it, and then they would progress that to cabinet and then all of caucus. So it's a really, and I'm so happy to be involved in this and specifically chairing it with some really good members in there to help represent Alberta.
And now it's time for us to move to sports. Now, Explosion Gymnastics are sending 2 teams to the World Gymnastrada in Amsterdam. Here's Thomas Wildman with more on their journey.
Explosion Gymnastics welcomed in their sponsors to watch the 2 performances they will be doing at Gymstrada 2023. The first was a routine that is part of a larger group routine for Team Canada, which will be the length of an entire football field.
The Team Canada routine, there's actually over 200 participants taking part in that one from all over Canada, east to west coast. So yeah, we are just a small chunk of that routine. It'll be really cool when they get there and they get to practice it with everybody, because the formations, the different line changes are going to look really neat on that big Olympic stadium field that they're performing it in.
The second and more acrobatic routine is called Avatar and is trying to use the event's theme as the way of the water to its fullest. This routine is quite exciting and took a long time to perfect.
It's been about 18 months in total. We started prepping the routine back in March of 2022 to go to nationals here in Canada. And then when we decided we were going to join Team Canada to represent at Worlds in Amsterdam, then we took a little bit of a breather because some of our athletes are in university, so we had to wait for them to come home. And once they got home this spring, then we fired up practices again and started working on choreo, changing and tweaking a few things here and there, adding a little bit to the routine. So we want to make it bigger and better. It's a world stage now, of course, and yeah, that's what's brought us here today.
The athletes are very excited to be going to the Netherlands and see all the other competitors from across the world.
It is so exciting, and it's such a privilege to be able to go and experience this. It's just super exciting, and we've worked so hard to get here, and it's really just a privilege to get to go.
World Gymnastrada 2023 will start July 30th and run until August 5th. Thomas Wildman, Primetime, Local News.
And we wish them the best of luck. That's a big opportunity to represent Lloydminster on the world stage. Let's check in now with Shelby Clark for another look at weather.
Thanks so much again there, Mr. Jace Mackey. Yes, now taking an extended look at your weather forecast. We'll be starting off with our central zone of the provinces. On the Alberta side, we have cooled down slightly from what we have been seeing compared to last week, as we are seeing some spots at those teen temperatures once again. So looking at 17 in Whitecourt, while Athabasca and down in Jasper just at 18, and then we start to warm it up from there. 21, 22 for Edmonton, Rocky Mountain House, Edson, and then we start to warm up to 23 in Red Deer and looking at 24 up in Cold Lake. So they start to warm up slowly more and more as they get closer to the Saskatchewan side, because on the Saskatchewan side they are seeing some scorchers on this end compared to Alberta side. We're looking at those mid-20s with Meadow Lake and North Battleford at 24 and 26, and then we start to slowly move into that heat warning. 28 degrees in Prince Albert and Melfort, so they're just a couple digits off from that 30-degree mark, and down in Saskatoon they are just sitting at 31. So make sure you are drinking lots of water and using that sunscreen if you're over in those areas. Switching over to our northern zone now on our Saskatchewan side, they are matching with us a little bit more in our central area, I would say. They are just seeing 25 as their warmest condition on this side down in Flin Flon, and then we start to slightly cool down. 24 up in Stony Rapids, while most spots are just hitting 22, and then over in Wollaston Lake at 21. But they aren't seeing those teen temperatures, so I would say all those areas are seeing some nice conditions for today. Going back over to Alberta side here, they have drastically cooled down from what they have been seeing compared to last week. They have been seeing some pretty warm conditions last week, but now as we are kind of starting off this new week here, they are starting to cool down. They are even seeing cooler temperatures compared to us in our central area. Grand Prairie is even just sitting at 11 degrees, so Grand Prairie has dropped pretty low, almost even seeing those winter temperatures almost at that point. And then we start to warm it up from there with 14 in Peace River, while it is 16 in Slave Lake, and then as we get a bit higher up, they start to get closer to that 20-degree mark. 17 and 19 for Fort McMurray, and over in High Level, and Fort Chipewyan is just hitting 20 degrees. Now as we go over to our southern zone, they are seeing some nice warm conditions on our Alberta side. Over in Banff, they are looking still quite cool, just at 18 degrees. Calgary and Coronation are seeing those mid-20s with 24 and 25, and down in Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, of course, they are seeing the nicest conditions there at 28 and 29 as they are getting closer to that 30-degree mark once again for the day. Going over to our Saskatchewan side here, an extreme heat warning is in place. Estevan at 36 degrees, so this is crazy conditions here, really wild temperatures. Hopefully everybody is staying safe. That's top priority. You know, I always say drink lots of water, have that sunscreen ready, and probably try and stay indoors with some AC if you can. Find some good shade, because these are pretty serious warm temperatures. 35 in both Moose Jaw and Regina, while it's 32 in Swift Current, so this area here is seeing that heat warning for sure. And we go a bit higher up to Yorkton and Kindersley. They are looking slightly cooler, but still almost hitting that 30-degree mark, just at 28 and 29. So these are definitely the warmest temperatures we are looking at after we've been checking out our central, northern, and southern zones. But now as we look at some overnight evening lows in our surrounding area for tonight, we will be looking at those double digits once again. A low of 10 expected for Provost, while a low of 11 is expected in Paradise Hill and Bonnyville. A low of 12, Meadow Lake will be expecting tonight, and Isla Crosse will be expecting another warm evening. Usually they have been seeing the warmest evening temperatures compared to these lists. So a low of 14 that Isla Crosse will be expecting tonight. Most of these spots will be expecting more of a clear and calm night, but Provost and Isla Crosse are seeing a high chance of some thunderstorms later on in the evening and, of course, some precipitation. So they will be expecting that throughout the night. Looking at some more spots here, they all, for the most part, are seeing expecting more of a clear and calm night tonight. A low of 11, Wainwright will be expecting, and most of these spots will be expecting a low of 10, so they also will be seeing those double digits, which won't be too bad there. And looking at our hourly forecast for our Wednesday here in the Border City, we will be cooling down tomorrow, so be prepared. We will be looking at around 19 to 20 degrees for our daytime high, so we aren't expecting too much of a scorcher, but that should still be a pretty nice balance to have for our day. That's all I have for now. RJ Smacky, we'll have our news coming up after the break.
I'm back at Border Paws Animal Shelter for another edition of Pet Project, and we have a returnee on our segment today, Boomer. We have done Boomer at the old shelter. She was brought back. Tell me a little bit about her story and kind of how she's doing now.
Yeah, so Boomer came to us last summer, and then we had her for quite some time, and then in the fall she got adopted. And she was left for about 3 months, but I'm not really sure what happened. I guess it just wasn't the right fit. She's about 8 years old, so yeah, she came back to us. She's not really thriving in the shelter though, so if anybody was interested in foster to adopt, we would definitely do a foster to adopt with her, just so you can kind of feel it out and see how it goes. She is getting quite skinny, so I think she's more comfortable. Some cats just thrive in a foster home, right? I mean, they don't want to eat here. It's kind of depressing and all that. So we would love to get her into a foster to adopt, and that way if it doesn't work out, you're not making any commitment. You can bring her back if it doesn't work. So yeah, no, she's a really sweet girl. She just wants to kind of lay with you and cuddle, and you know, she's not super playful. She's an older gal, like I said, about 8 years old. So, but yeah, if anybody is interested in even just giving her a foster home for the time being, definitely reach out and we can get that going.
Now, I know that, you know, she's not doing too great here, but besides that, what is her personality like when she is, you know, in a thriving situation?
Yeah, so she's quite the sweetheart, right? Like I said, she doesn't really play much. But yeah, she's just kind of looking for a lap or, you know, a couch to lay on where she can just relax and, you know, be the senior little old lady that she is. But she's very sweet, and she doesn't seem to really mind the other animals. I mean, we haven't put her in. I mean, I think she would prefer to be an only cat. But I mean, if you want, because it's foster to adopt, if you do have other animals, then we can kind of see how she would do. I think as long as the other animals left her alone, she would be fine. I don't think she would do good with like kittens, as well as like, you know, younger dogs. But I think an older dog, an older cat, she would be fine, because she's quite a sweet girl and she just kind of wants to hang around. So, and I do think she would be good with all ages.
Oh, perfect.
We have quite a bit of young volunteers that come in with their parents, you know, under 5, and she does really good with the kids. So I don't think there would be any issues with kids at all, kids of any age. So
that's perfect, and that was actually my next question. So that it's great that she'd be fine, you know, in pretty much any environment. You just have to adjust. She just needs an adjustment period, which I think fostering to adopt would be the perfect scenario for her. Now, over the weekend, you had your microchipping event finally. Tell me how that went and how many people showed up and how the barbecue went and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so it was a great weekend. I mean, the weather was pretty good. It was a little hot, but yeah, before we even opened the doors at 11, we had already had 8 people lined up outside, so it was really good. We got 18 animals microchipped, so that's 18 animals. Hopefully, if they ever get out, we can reunite them faster. And everybody who came and got microchipped went and got a chip and a pop and a hot dog, so it went really good. There was quite a bit of people who stopped by for the barbecue to show support for that, as well as, like I said, we had 18 animals, so I mean, that's pretty good. Given the weekend, right, a lot of people were gone that weekend, so we're hoping to do it again probably in the fall, maybe September. Do it again when everybody's kind of back from vacation, and then that way, even if we can do it every couple of months and get 18 animals done each time, I mean, we're making a huge difference, right?
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
no, it was really good. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, and this is definitely the type of an event that you do multiple times throughout the year, because it's just, you know, it's a way for you guys to raise money, but it's also a way for owners of pets to get that discount on the microchipping, so that, you know, if they, in the event that they do lose their animal, it'll be a lot easier to reunite them.
Exactly right. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody, because you get your animal done at a cheaper price, and then when they come in, we can call you right away, and your animal doesn't have to sit for, you know, 3 or 4 days. By the time you realize they're here, we can call you. And also not just us, like, you know, if they end up jumping a train and ending up in a different town or something, I've seen it on the news, they get reunited. So it's just a great thing for people to have, and it also just kind of takes a relief off of all the shelters.
And now you have another adoption event. Tell me a little bit about what that is, where it is, and what people should know about it.
Yeah, so we are doing one at Pet Value this weekend, I believe from 1 to 4. We're probably only gonna have cats at that one, just because we're actually down to 1 puppy right now.
Which is good.
So, yeah, we got all the puppies adopted at our PetSmart adoption event, so that's really nice to see. So we're gonna have some kittens, as well as probably a few special cases, like maybe Boomer, and you know Jenga the Bengal.
Yes.
We're gonna bring him so he can get a bit of exposure. So yeah, no, it'll be 1 to 4 at Pet Value, and we should have a bunch of cats there as well as kittens. So come on and visit the kittens, and maybe you'll end up finding your forever baby.
Which would be very exciting.
Absolutely.
Now, same question as every week. Is there any donations that you're in need of?
So again, I feel like I'm on repeat, but again, actually we got our washing machine working, so we're doing good on blankets, but again, we can always use them. We can never have enough. But yeah, again, kitten food, we're seeing obviously a lot of kittens coming through the door, so wet, kibble, anything like that, as well as toys. We go through a lot of cat toys, as well as dog toys, but mainly cat toys. We can always use more of that, because they seem to throw them out of the cage sometimes and lose them and stuff, or break them. So yeah, I mean, you can even go to the dollar store. They've got a great selection too, as well as our Amazon wish list. You can always go to and see what we have there.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this gets Boomer out of here and into her forever home, or at least a temporary home till she finds her real home, so she can, you know, hopefully come out of her shell a little bit more and thrive in a better environment for her. So thank you for joining me, and hopefully something happens with Boomer.
Thank you.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery, downtown Lloydminster.
Joining us today for Primetime Local News is international best-selling author Doug Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining us today, Doug.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation. I look forward to it.
Of course, no problem. Really excited to have you on here because we're speaking on your release called You're Not Alone. So starting off with, I guess, the easiest question, what exactly is this novel all about?
So You Are Not Alone actually came from some conversations that I was having with some colleagues who were witnessing things in the mental health space, that there was this gap from a support structure perspective. And they said, you know, you should write a book about it and take it from there. Maybe that's what we need to have to sort of spur organizations and people to think a little bit more. So the book is, long story short, the book is about mentoring, how mentoring can be a part of the support structure for mental health. And we kind of, I unravel a lot of my own personal stories in the book itself. So some of the things I went through.
Of course, and like you were saying that you were kind of giving a little backstory of, like, you know, how this kind of inspired you to write this.
It did, because I went through obviously, I'm a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, and so I went through some times where I was having to deal with, you know, some pretty traumatic type events, and I had no support structure. And as a result of that, I ended up with post-traumatic stress. And so the book speaks to that. And it also speaks to the aspect of what that did, not for, but what that did to my family, who ended up becoming my support structure, because the organization at that time point didn't have anything in place, and so they actually became my support structure.
Now, when it comes to this novel, what it, deals with that a lot of people out there are struggling with as well, what kind of message and what you're hoping that readers will get out of this after they read this novel?
What I'm really hoping is, number one, the awareness part. So that we want, to raise the awareness of mental health, but more importantly, that mentoring can actually be a part of that support structure. And one of the big things is that it's okay to ask for help. And especially us males, we're pretty stubborn that way, where we don't we prefer not to ask for help because it's a sign of weakness. It's a horrible stigmatism that we need to get rid of. But for the most part, what I would like people to, no matter what your gender is, I would like it if you left after reading the book, if you walked away from there and realized that as a result of your reading the book, that you may have some mental health challenges, and that it's okay for you to reach out and say, I need help. Extend your hand and say, I need help, and there will be somebody there to help you to begin your journey.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very important message to have. I think that's really nice that you have this coming out for people to check out. Now, where can people find some more information on you and, of course, on this book, You're Not Alone, just so they can, read this and just want to find some more information?
Certainly. So the book is available on Amazon, amazon.com, amazon.ca. So it's available there for your listening audience if they so wish to go there. Just do a search on Doug Lawrence, and then if you want to direct message me, you can. And then finally, probably the easiest is just send me an email. So email is still there. So, my email address is doug.lawrence@talentc, so the word talent with the letter C on the end, .ca, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I possibly can, and we can begin our journey together.
All right, perfect, Doug. Well, I really appreciate you giving us your time and being able to speak today on this. And I think this will help a lot of people out there. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And finally, Shelby, here's an interesting story. It has to do with Amazon. So Amazon is bringing its Palm Pay technology to Whole Foods. This technology,
pretty interesting.
Yeah, it works by reading the distinct features on the palm to identify the user, and then it charges the payment method tied to their Amazon account. So Amazon first rolled this out in 2020, and there's 14 Whole Food locations here in Canada. And this is something that's used by other stadiums across the U.S. and some other stores in the United States, but we'll see if it comes here to Canada.
It's kind of giving a little bit of Black Mirror, if you've ever watched that show on Netflix. It's giving a little bit of that technology sense where it's advancing so much that it's kind of getting a bit scary almost being able to do that.
And I think the thing with that show too is it shows like what the future could be, kind of shows a little bit of stuff that might scare some people. And now it's here in real life, so we'll see how people think about this.
You have to give it a shot.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I could scan your hand ahead of time or something, but we'll see. That's all the time we have tonight. We'll be back here again tomorrow. See ya.